the system impact and the data impact of the risk.
Again, it can be divided. We can ask this system. Okay, for example, let me give you a system.
If the system is down, of course, it's affect the data. But
exactly, if the system is down, or manipulated with, or hacked, the system itself. Okay, for example, ATM system. Okay, so I'm not worried about the data because the data can be fixed, and the bank will know what is the right amount in certain accounts, but the system itself, the ATM itself that is connected to the bank, that system becomes the asset that we want to protect on.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Good.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Perfect.
Great.
Thank you.
These are great questions, and I'm so happy that you guys are insisting on asking these questions because, you know, down the road, as you deal with the CISSP exam and the questions, this come up. Okay, so again, ask away. Okay, don't just accept what I say. Ask and challenge me on this. Right? All right. Now, so we do have 45 minutes between now and the end of the day. We will try to squeeze in this part to it, and if we will not be able to fully understand that part, then we will go back to it tomorrow morning. We are ahead of schedule, which is good, and that's what we want to be. We want to leave ourselves enough time for review sessions, okay? So the next part is the risk analysis itself. Risk analysis, if you look at the impact side of the equation, of the risk equation, the impact can be quantitative or qualitative. The same thing for risk analysis. So we want to analyze the risk either from a quantitative point of view or qualitative point of view. The best way to do it is to take the hybrid approach. So both quantitative and qualitative. It's a $1 million risk, and this risk is high. It's a $1 million risk, but this risk is low. Can this exist in the same organization, saying $1 million risk low and $1 million risk high?
Of course.
What is the scenario that we can see that can bring us to this conclusion, that we can have the same amount, the same quantity, but different quality?
If this 1 million doesn't affect the business continuity or doesn't affect the organization mission, then it will have a low risk rate.
Perfect. Shachar, this is perfect. This is the perfect explanation that I would expect each one of you to go with in your state of mind as you enter the CISSP. What Shachar described here is the appetite of the business toward business interruption. This is the state of mind of businessmen, okay? This is how they want to have you in the CISSP as certified CISSP, okay? So they want you to think like that. Yes, I can lose $1 million here, $1 million there. But guess what? This $1 million will have the impact, the ongoing impact that can last for 10 years. This one is just one loss, one day. But this one will last with me. This one is higher than this one, okay? It's the same amount, but different effects on the business itself, right? Good, yes, great. Shachar, thank you.
But the effect is quantifying and calculated to money, and so quantified to money, and even if the effect will stay 10 years, still the cost of this effect or impact is just $1 million, so it's the same. I think that in some companies they would prefer to spread the damage on 10 years and not on one day.
No. I agree. I agree. So maybe I wasn't clear about this. The impact itself is in relation to an asset. Okay, so maybe the impact here is $1 million and here is a $1 million and the asset's worth the same, but the overall risk is higher than this. And we want to emphasize this when we analyze the risk itself, okay? So this is risk analysis, this is where we're going now. Okay, we're not talking about the impact itself anymore. It's just part of the overall risk. So yes, will be higher than the just $1 million loss of the asset. Okay, did I answer the question?
Yep.
All right, great. All right, so let's look at risk analysis. Now we break it down. The hybrid approach is broken down to quantitative and qualitative risk analysis. The quantitative risk analysis, the more tricky is the, sorry about that. The quantitative risk analysis is the more tricky one, okay? And this is the one we will need to memorize. This is the mathematical equations, mathematical challenge in the CISSP. This is the most you can expect. It's nothing more than the third grade, fourth grade you already went through in school. However, a lot of CISSP candidates fail in this because their mind is blown, is filled with information, so they forget the basic mathematics. Okay, so I don't want you guys to forget your basic mathematics. So we will go through this, the quantitative risk analysis. There are certain equations at the end of it, and this will be equations that we will need to memorize, right? So for the quantitative risk analysis, there are some variables to help us analyze the cost and benefit of investing in remediating a risk. The first variable is the AV. There are 5 variables, right? AV stands for asset value, right? Asset value is something that the organization gives us. It's not something that we, as CISSPs and security professionals, we do not set the asset value. This is something that is listed in the books of the organization. The financial department will probably be able to tell us. If they're not able to tell us, then the CEO, somebody executive from the organization will tell us this asset is worth $1 million. Okay? If they have the calculations, great. If they don't have the calculations, we still need to get a number. And this number is not brought by us. So in your CISSP exam, ISC will say, this is your asset value. Okay? Or they will give you the overall asset value with another asset. They will say, this room is worth $1 million and the entire building is $3 million. Okay? And they want you to evaluate the risk on just the one room. But they will try to confuse you with the entire building. Okay? So the asset value is always something that is given to us. We don't need to overthink it. Exposure factor is the second variable. Exposure factor stands for EF. Exposure factor is the level, the percentage of productivity that was affected of that asset. For example, our Exchange server is down, okay? So our ability to receive and send emails is down, okay? We do have some redundancy. We do have an old Exchange server, an old backup server that we switched up, but the email system is running very, very slow. So instead of us having the super fast, quick email exchange system available, we can now send, I don't know, if we normally send 200 emails in an hour, then now we can only send 100 emails an hour. The exposure factor is 50%. Productivity of the system, productivity of the asset is down 50%. Okay? If the productivity, if the EF is 0.6, what will be the productivity level of the asset?
99.34.
If the EF is 0.6, what will be the productivity level of the asset?
40. 40%.
40%, exactly. 0.4, 40%. Okay? No, that's good. That's good. I want you to think 40%. All right? So the exposure factor is the productivity level that we lose. Okay? For your Israeli ones, there's the אחוזי נכות. Okay? All right? So that's the level that we lose over that area, right? Over that asset. If we take these two together and multiply them, asset value times exposure factor, we get to the single loss expectancy. So if I have a $1 million asset, right? In this example, let's work with this example that we have here. We have $100,000 worth of an asset. The exposure factor, given worst case scenario, means that we lose 20% productivity from that asset, okay? So 100,000 times 0.2 gives us $20,000 SLE, single loss expectancy, all right? So given a single scenario, materialized scenario of a risk, just one, not one in a year, not one in a million year, one in a lifetime of the asset, means that we lose $20,000, all right? These are the first three. Now we go to the next two. The fourth variable is the ARO. ARO stands for Analyzed Rate of Occurrence. The question here, since we are managing a budget and we are strategists and we are business people, we look at things from an analyzed point of view because we have a budget for a year, right? So the analyzed analysis is super important here to know how to direct our resources, right? So the question here is how many times do we expect that worst case scenario to take place in 1 year, right? For example, an earthquake in Israel takes place every 100 years. What will be my ARO?
1%.
Which means
Exactly.
0.01,
1. Yeah.
right? And if tornado takes place in Colorado 3 times a year, the same place, the same spot, what will be my ARO?
3.
3,
0.003.
right? Okay, we're all good? Right. From
Why
this
3 times a year? It's 3%.
Should
No,
be
it's not 3%, it's 3.
300%.
300%.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. The last variable that we have, the last component that we have for quantitative risk analysis is ALE. That's where we're targeting. That's where we want to get to. Okay. ALE stands for Annualized Loss Expectancy. It's not the single loss expectancy, it's the annualized loss expectancy. And if we see that the SLE was $20,000 for that one asset, and that worst case scenario takes place 3 times a year, now we're talking about a loss of $60,000, right? So think of it this way. We have an asset worth $100,000. Threats will get materialized 3 times a year. Each one of them will cause us $20,000 loss. $60,000 loss. How much money will you invest in addressing a $60,000 loss? How much money will you invest in it?
less than 60.
What's that?
Less than 60.
Less than 60. Exactly. Less than 60. So it can be 59,999, right? As long as we save money, CISSP loves us. Perfect. The problem starts in CISSP questions, and guys, I need you to be with me, okay? Bear with me. We're almost done, but this is really, really important. I just see your faces, and I can see I'm blowing up your mind, but bear with me. We have the first ALE, right? First ALE says $60,000. Perfect. We did the what if, right? We got to $60,000. Now our challenge in CISSP questions, those dumb a-holes, they want us to think of the ALE 2. There's another ALE. You know what this other ALE is? Is the ALE of the what if I implement the controls that I want to implement. What will be the ALE then? That's where they confuse us. That's where they play with our minds, okay? And getting to the second ALE is the tough question. So basically what you need to ask yourself, okay, this is a given ALE. I have the $60,000 loss, right? If I do all the work and implement this control, I spend $40,000. Okay, ALE 1 without the control is $60,000, right? ALE 2 after implementing the control is $40,000, right? Makes sense to implement? Yes. But you don't answer the question yet, because you need to ask yourself, what is the cost of that safeguard? How much does it cost me to maintain, to have people working on it, to patch, electricity, place, contract with the vendor, everything around it? And if this will be $20,000 and more, you don't do it. Do you see what I'm saying?
Then it's just a loss.
Again, $60,000 with no mitigation, no controls. $40,000 with controls, okay? However, those controls will require another $21,000. This doesn't make sense. It doesn't make any financial sense. If it will cost us $19,000, then yes, go for it. And that's where you want to be. You want to know the value of the safeguard. You want to see the cost and benefit. And guys, this one, much like the risk formula, is a whiteboard. Write it down, please. I want you to memorize this 4 bullets by heart. 3 a.m. in the morning, I'm going to call you and I'm going to ask you in Hebrew, what is the ALE 2? And you're going to explain to me in Hebrew what it is, all right? I want you to live and dream this. You do not take your CISSP without controlling this, because otherwise it will control you. This exists in any exam. There's no CISSP without this. All right, guys? This is the heart of it. I know it's the end of the day. You're going to practice tonight. You're going to work hard. Nobody promised you easy path. But this is very hard. We need to deal with it. And I need you to memorize this. All right? Write it down. Memorize it. Write it down times and times again until you figure it out, until you know how to explain this to yourself.
Question.
Yep.
The last formula, the cost benefit.
Yep.
When I'm talking about ALE1 minus ALE2,
Yep.
it means that it's the annual loss expectancy from the first from a single risk minus
No.
of the
Go
total
back.
ALE of the
Right, the total one, not a single. Single is the SLE. This is the annualized, is the total over the year. If you have ALE1, okay?
So what is ALE2?
ALE2 is when I do implement controls and do something about it, I get to still have ALE, some sort of ALE. Let's say that my Exchange server, okay, let's give an example. I have an Exchange server on-prem, and it's being backed up with another Exchange server in the disaster recovery site. Okay, so I have two. They work as a redundant systems. Okay, one of them is getting hit by whatever, not ransomware, but one of them is getting hit and it's not functioning. Now all email traffic is now directed to the second one. All right, it's one server, it needs to deal with double the amount that it's used to. Okay, productivity is going down. Now, my question is, okay, if this happens, I don't know, years, then it's something I can live with. I'm not going to implement any controls over this. But if it takes place 3 times a year, this is too much. I want to do something about it. So what am I going to do about it? I'm going to go up to the cloud, okay? And in the cloud, I can expect much less downtime from the email systems, right? Still, there is a downtime. No one can argue about that. Downtime there exists. That means that on-prem, I have a certain ALE, right, Shachar?
Mm-hmm.
And in the cloud, I have a different ALE. Because the same thing can happen in both, right? You see that?
Yeah.
So that ALE on-prem minus the ALE in the cloud minus whatever it's going to cost me to manage that cloud infrastructure for emails. I will need to train a certain guy to work on the G Suite and this and that and the fees for Google and transformation from the cloud to on-prem back if we decide to do this or that. Make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Question.
Yes, please. So ALE1 is the let's say the damage or loss expectancy before the implementation of any solution, any control.
Right.
ALE2 is after we implemented some control at the beginning of the year. Okay.
Right.
And I understand that the ACS is the total, let's say, cost of operation. So it's a total cost of ownership,
Exactly.
without the investment itself.
Exactly.
So as far as I
Yes.
understand, this formula is relevant only for the first year and not for the next one, because on the next year you have the solution already implemented, and if you purchased a permanent license for some software with free updates, I don't know, for 10 years, you don't need to invest more money in the solution, just in maintenance.
You are absolutely right, Alan. You are absolutely right. And let me emphasize this. This formula is relevant for a year, 1 year, always 1 year. Okay.
It's not only 1 year; it's the first year of the solution.
Hang on.
Because the second year is also 1 year.
Let me give you another scenario. Maybe after you decided to go for this, it made sense, perfect sense. January 1st, we bought the online exchange, and we went with it. But guess what? During that year, coming June, we invested in this and we pushed everything to the cloud, and everything is good. Everything is great. Coming June, Microsoft got hacked by #1 hacking group in the world. They don't give up. Their exchange online is collapsed. We want to go back. Okay? The next year discussion will bring in different ALEs. So this is an annual discussion, not just the first year. I'm very careful in calling it the first year because they can be only 1 year for analysis. Okay? Did I help or did I confuse you?
Yes, I understand what you're saying, but it means that on the next year, if a solution is already in place, the ALE1 and ALE2 will be the same.
or less. The ALE2 will be less than that one. So
It
it
will
makes
be
more
the same
sense.
because in both cases you will have the same solution already implemented, and the only thing
Right.
that you need to reduce is the operational costs.
Right. So let me ask you this. This is a place that I always ask this question. Since I heard it from some students of mine back then, it's not as popular question in the CISSP, but some students mentioned that they were asked in the CISSP exam, what if a certain vendor comes up with this great solution that brings your ALE2 to 0? Would you go for this? What will be your next action as a CISO?
Depends on the yes.
Yeah, your next action has to be ACS analysis. You see that? You have to know, even when the control is free, you have to know what it will cost you in-house as an operational cost. Make
Of course.
sense, guys?
Yes, but the question I asked, by the way, it's not related to a free control, and but something you bought the in the previous year, and the
Right.
cost rate is so the operational cost is already known because you paid for it last year.
No,
You
I
know
agree.
how
What I'm saying is that in CISSP, different experience by different students was about that. You know, they say ALE2 is 0. What will be your next action? Okay, ALE2 is, to a lot of people means, oh, okay, let's implement it, let's run and go with it. Okay, no, you need to stop and think and remember that we have the ACS, the operational cost. All right?
Very important.
Yep. All right, guys. Let's continue now. This was quantitative risk analysis. And this was really important. This is math for um, for super advanced CISSPs. Okay, this was the math that you need for CISSP, not more than this. I'm half joking. Come on, people, smile. It's just the first day.
I think it's not enough. I think
One more to
it's not
go.
enough. It's not detailed enough.
It's not detailed. Yeah, I know. I agree.
Yes, because also the cost of the operational cost also can change from the first year to the second year because you have some learning curves in the beginning.
I agree with you. I completely agree with you. For the
Whereas this is
CISSP, eyes on
in
the prize. Eyes on the prize. Right? For the CISSP, to pass the CISSP, that's what we need. This formulas, these 4 lines, I need you to memorize it. If you want to expand your knowledge, learn more about risk analysis, there's a whole methodology. I personally train on it. It's called FAIR, FAIR. You can expand your knowledge there, and it's a world of knowledge there. And I encourage you doing that later on after you get your CISSP, and we're all happy. So the next part is the qualitative risk analysis. Qualitative risk analysis is relatively easy. This is where it's easy going. Qualitative risk matrix says that on one side, on the other one, put the like probability, divided to low, medium, and high. This is the heat map of a qualitative risk analysis. Qualitative risk analysis is basically saying we don't know numbers, maybe we don't care about numbers, we just care about value, okay? And when we don't know how to evaluate the value of a risk, we go to our organization and ask people what do they think about the risk. This is called the Delphi technique. Okay, in your book you have other techniques, for example, Monte Carlo, fish, and you have many other techniques, but this is by far the most popular one in CISSP exams. So if you will get question on qualitative risk analysis, you will most likely be asked on the Delphi technique. But I encourage you to go to the book, expand your reading there, because you might get a question here, maybe a question there on other techniques on qualitative risk analysis. Qualitative risk analysis says we don't know numbers. It's easier for us to perform. It's easier for us to get an understanding, immediate understanding of our risk posture. Argue less with executives and explain the numbers, okay? But the right way to do risk analysis is by combining the two. So when you get a question in your CISSP, what is the best way to analyze a risk? One will be quantitative, one will be qualitative, one will be something that is not relevant, and one will be hybrid module of both quantitative and qualitative. And this is your answer. Okay, you want to use both in your CISSP. Make sense, guys?
Yep.
All right. The next one, we're almost done. We're almost done. Bear with me, okay? I think we have 10 more minutes and that's it. I'll release you for today. The next one is called KRI. KRI is like a sensor for risk increase. Think of it this way. We talked about earthquake. We can talk about tsunamis, okay? They have sensors in the Pacific Ocean to monitor potential tectonic movement in the Pacific, because that one will create a tsunami in the west coast of America and in Japan, right? So they put sensors out there. Those sensors can warn them about potential tsunami. Whether it happens or not, it doesn't matter. That sensor's only role is to raise the flag and say there is a potential increase in the risk of a tsunami here. The same thing we do for cyber risks. We put KRIs out there. KRIs can be a definition of our concern, okay? If we do software development, we want to probably work with HR and say, listen, director of HR, the average of people leaving our company from the development teams, the average is 3. So in any case that this average is passed, so if we have 4 and above in 1 month leaving the company, I, as a CISO, want to know about this. Why is that? Because that's a potential of a data leakage that we're probably not ready to deal with. So that's an increase of the risk of data leakage. All right? So KRIs are the indicators of a change in risk. It's change for the worst, always for the worst. Okay? I don't want KRIs that will tell me, oh, your risk is now lower. Can't say that, but it's not interesting enough for me. I want to know when things go bad, when things go south, okay? The next one is the residual risk. So I have the total risk score and the controls that I put in it, okay, mitigation that I do, will bring me down to a residual risk. The risk doesn't go away, okay? Conceptually, the risk doesn't go away. In CISSP, no matter what we do, controls we implement, unless we avoid the risk, unless we avoid that business line, okay? Unless we don't do businesses in Europe, then the risk of GDPR fines is always there, right? Maybe someone can indicate that us in GCP didn't do this and didn't do that, okay? And they can point fingers at us and can blame us for negligence. So we are always at risk of these huge fines of the GDPR. However, we can do so much to bring that risk down to an acceptable level. And that's one thing that I really want you to understand. There are a lot of terms here in this next 3 or 4 slides, and that will be the end of today. Okay, but I want you to understand those terms. Very, very important. First one is the excessive risk. Okay, I want you to look at my screen now. Okay, just forget everything else you're doing and just look at the screen. So we have this map. Okay, first, the one side of it is excessive risk, is the red one. The green one is the risk appetite or acceptable risk that we have. Okay? Shachar, are you with us?
Yeah, I'm looking at the.
All right. No, I just wanted to look at the screen to see the colors, and then you can work with it, all right?
Yeah.
So let's say that we had a risk analysis, we had risk assessment, okay? That risk assessment came back and put the probability and impact for each and every one of the risks. Each yellow dot represents a risk, okay? It has a representation of the probability and the impact, okay? Whatever the numbers are, whatever the levels are. Now, between the areas, we have a line. It's called the risk tolerance. The risk appetite is everything we have here and the absorbent level that we have in the organization for cyber risks. Anything that is above this risk tolerance line is referred to as excessive risk. Okay? This is the map, greater map, the same map, right? Now take a careful look at the risk tolerance. The risk tolerance itself has a certain width, okay? It's not just a line, it has a width, okay? As you can see, I have a risk here that touches from this area. I also have a risk here that touches from that area. The width of the risk tolerance means that in a certain level, we can hit the risk tolerance, but management will say, stick with it, don't pull out. This is taken from the stock exchange market. You know, the stock comes down, not everybody ditch, right? Not everybody sell immediately. They stay. Some of them will sell, but some of them will stay. So we have a width of the risk tolerance. The total risk of the organization is the multiplication of the threats times vulnerabilities, which is the probability that we saw, and the asset value, overall assets value, which is our impact. Do you see that? Do you see the formula, the risk formula here?
Yeah.
All right. So if we control this part, vulnerabilities, and we bring it down, we bring down the total risk, right? This is a given situation, we don't control it. This is a given situation by the organization. So this is the area we want to control. How do we control it? Controls, physical, administrative, and technical controls, all right? Now, take a look at this risk here, this yellow dot here, all right? Shachar, are you with me?
Yes.
I know that you're writing it. I love it, but I just really need you to focus on this. Take a look at this yellow dot here, right? When I invest in bringing down its probability, I maybe invest in, I don't know, more redundancy or more whatever. I invest in it. That's why we call it control gap. I mitigate the gap. Okay, I invest in this risk and I invest in the controls that it had. See how the impact is not changed, right? The impact, the asset value is still the same, but the probability is down in such way that this risk now is in the risk acceptable zone. Okay, the risk appetite zone. Do you see that? Right? Again, the risk was here. We invested in probability controls. We mitigated the control gap that we had here. Okay, and we brought the risk down to an acceptable level. All right? So the residual risk that we now have is that total risk that we mapped up there minus the controls gap. So every single risk that we implemented controls in is taken under consideration to bring us down to the residual risk. And the residual risk is the risk that we monitor. Okay, we keep looking at it, making sure it doesn't increase more than what we can accept. All right? Sounds good, guys? I know it's a lot to absorb, but practice,
Yes, but
practice, and more
question.
practice. Yeah.
But question. Why didn't we actually mitigated the risk which has the highest probability level, the one on the top right corner, for example?
This one or this
No.
one?
Yes.
That's a good question. This is based on an organizational decision-making process. There is a security board or committee, okay? And that information security committee is considering all options, and they decided to take care of this risk, okay?
Okay.
And the way that they decided to take care of the risk is, one of 4 ways to handle any risk. We can mitigate the risk, implement controls, right? We can transfer the risk, buy insurance. We can accept the risk. We can say, okay, this is an acceptable level of risk. Or we can avoid the risk. We can say, okay, we're not entering the EU market because of the GDPR regulations. At the end of the day, guys, this is what I want you to remember. We have a risk map. That risk map, and this answers your question, that risk map represents the decisions that our organization took based on the risk analysis. So for your risk that you just asked me, for that one, we decided to purchase an insurance, which is okay. Okay, for this one as well. This one here is a regulatory risk, for example, and we decided to avoid it until further notice. Okay? So I think it's two last slides that we have here. Just topics that might be in those risk assessment questions. CapEx versus OpEx. CapEx is the capital expense. The OpEx is the operational expense. This is when you think business, okay? Capital expense means that I put my money, okay, one time, purchase. And operational expense means that I pay throughout the year, and every year has its expenses, so it's an ongoing payment. Organizations, maybe some of them will prefer CapEx to spend one-time fee, and maybe some of them will prefer to spend the operational cost, which is much higher for them. It's, again, based on their risk appetite, on the appetite toward controls. And the last part of today is that when we run the control assessment, and Aaron, you mentioned those terms before, you mentioned TCO. TCO is the total cost of ownership. That gives me the overall cost of the control. Okay, and we mentioned that before. Also, return on investment, ROI, is another term that you need to get familiar with. And this one is being measured by percentages, okay? So if we saved 5 times than what we spent last year, we saved this year 5 times more than that, then our ROI is 500%. All right? Okay, guys, this is where we're going to stop for today. And any questions so far on this part of today and on the overall day and your experience and whatnot? Anything you
I
want
have
to
a
share?
question about the residual risk.
Yeah.
Eventually, the residual risk is not, you cannot put it by numbers, right? You said like the residual risk, like I had a risk, I used some controls, and now this risk is an acceptable risk. This is how you measure it.
This language is borrowed from the financial industry. This is not cybersecurity, perpetual, owned language, okay? This language is from the financial industry, and there are definitely numbers behind it. In our world of cybersecurity management, most likely we will not have a number for the residual risk. You're right about that. Okay?
Good.
All right, guys. Any questions, special requests for tomorrow?
Sure.
You want to share?
Let's put some expectations, some real expectations. How many times we have to complete module 1? Module
would
1, I
say-
mean, so the domain 1 questions.
Yeah,
Twice times.
I would expect you guys to spend between an hour and 2 hours tonight practicing questions on domain 1. This will give me at least 2 to 3 exams that you take between now and tomorrow morning. Okay? So you can take one now.
Is it the same test or different ones? Do we have?
Again, go to the class marker, take domain 1. It will pull out different questions.
Okay.
Domain 1. Okay? So retake the exam. Okay?
How much time? 5? 10?
I'm
2
saying at least 2 to 3 times. If you can give me 8, that'll be great. But that means that tomorrow morning you'll be very tired. Okay?
Okay.
All right.
So every
before-
time we have different questions, right?
Yes,
Yes.
hopefully, yes.
They do repeat very often, but it doesn't matter. We take them.
It's okay. It's okay. I want you guys to
What
practice
about the
that.
practice test, the book? What do we do with it?
Exactly, and you have the book. Okay? So if you
So-
get bored with that one, go to the book. But I need you on the class marker because I see the results and I can help you tomorrow morning.
Okay.
All right?
Okay.
All right, guys. Have a great evening and give me those exams.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Sure.
You
Thank
too.
you.
You
See you
too.
tomorrow.
Have
a great evening.
Bye.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye.
Good night.